Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. Do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
And local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And welcome, everybody, to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider, bringing you all the latest news and coverage, conversation in regards to, Kentucky, of course, focusing on Kentucky. We here at Kentucky's Voice, we pride ourselves in being a conservative media outlet that reaches across the state. And we want to continue to be able to do so. So while I have you here just for a real quick second, if you want to partner with us, you want to help out the show, you can text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 502-571-0970. Once again, that's text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 502-571-0970. And throughout the show today, if you want to reach out and shoot us a text, you want to give us your opinions, let us know how you feel, you can also text that same line with your messages, your thoughts, your feelings, because today we'll be covering continuing, coverage that you've had on this show over the past few weeks, in large part regards to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and more specifically, the Kentucky response to it. We've seen quite a few people, leftists, I guess you'd say. We'll go into exactly what that ideology means here in a bit. But leftists in Kentucky making some abhorrent, horrible remarks. And we've also seen nationwide the same kind of response, where we've seen a lot of left responses that we find to be quite awful. And I think it can't be overstated how much the assassination affects, I guess you'd say, the psyche of those on the right. Not just because Charlie Kirk was a young man, father of 2 children, had a wife, a family, but it was really encapsulated well, I believe. Savannah Maddox, representative here in Kentucky, shared this out, where she said, in 2024, we found out they would shoot our president. In 2025, we found out they'd shoot me. And I think that's really an important point, because the assassination of Charlie Kirk, it's not like he was a governmental official. It's not like he had the capacity to directly affect your life in the same way perhaps a governor or a mayor would. While political violence across any form is horrific and not something to be condoned, I think conceptually we as a people somewhat understand the concept of something like a president or a mayor or a governor having an attempted assassination on them, like we saw with Trump. Horrible, awful, shouldn't happen, but we at least kind of recognize that they have power over people's lives. And so I think there's a little bit more of a psychological understanding we get. But when it comes to somebody like Charlie Kirk, he wasn't a government official. He wasn't somebody who had that kind of institutional power. All he had was thoughts and ideas that many of us, especially if you're listening here on Kentucky's Voice, share. And his ability to affect your life, to change anything going on in your life, was only as good as his ideas were. Was he good enough to convince others to view things the same way he does? And in the same way that when that's the battlefield, is the battlefield of ideas, you have your own way to fight back with your voice, with what you have to say. However, what we saw, and I think what is shaping us to be where, look, we can't, it's not just the assassination, but the response to it is revealing a lot about where we are as a nation. And I don't think it's necessarily good where we are. We are seeing a lot of people awakening to the evils, but there's still a large percentage of people who don't recognize just how evil their thought processes may be. And so we'll be discussing some of the people in Kentucky, some things they've said and done, and also just generally discussing how those, the leftist ideology, what it's based on and how it leads to this kind of evil conversations. We'll also be talking about the Louisville Vigil that was held at U of L for Charlie Kirk. So we'll have all that and more today here on Kentucky's Voice. We'll be back in a few short seconds. We'll talk to you here in just a little bit.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooper Ryder here, bringing you the news, politics, and commentary on things going on here in Kentucky. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about the assassination of Charlie Kirk and its effect on Kentucky, and officials' response is what we'll be discussing. If you want to join into the conversation, feel free to shoot us a text at 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. Text us, join into the conversation here. And to the second segment there, I will be looking at some of those texts. So feel free, get those in as you have opinions. You can also text the word give to that line, 502-571-0970, if you want to help out. And I think what is really telling about what's been going on with this response to the assassination from the left has been the and but is what I'll call it. They're like, yeah, it's horrible, but Charlie Kirk's a mean, awful, horrible person and shouldn't be mourned. And unless you think that I'm just making that up and people aren't saying that, I want to draw your attention to a man who calls himself Emma Curtis. He's a city council man that says he's a woman out of Lexington, Kentucky, sits on the city council there. Now, some of you may be wondering, what you're telling me the city of Lexington here in Kentucky has a transgender city council member. Of course, Lexington does. He didn't necessarily win because he had great ideas. Funny enough story there. He only won because the opponent he was running against, after filing deadline, after he was the only one declared, a story broke regarding her, the opponent he was running against, the councilwoman he was running against, had engaged in has been accused of engaging in sexual assault against another city council woman. So that was two women. One was accused of sexually assaulting the other, and there was a restraining order filed. And so the man that calls himself Emmett Curtis was running against was somebody who couldn't legally be in the city council chambers due to the restraining order. It's pretty crazy, but this was all going on in Lexington. But he had tweeted this out. He said, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's death, political leaders have rightfully called for an end to political and gun violence. And then that's part of the and there, and gun violence. Of course, leave it to the left to try to wrap in an assassination of a right figure to make it work with their political viewpoints of gun control, but leaving that to the breath. He goes on to say, but many have done so while in the same breath whitewashing the violent rhetoric that Kirk espoused and calling for more violence. This is unconscionable and it's dangerous. This is the kind of statement that we have got to be calling out and saying, no more. That is wrong. Stop it. There is nothing Charlie Kirk said that was violent rhetoric. There is nothing. Words cannot be violent short of the words ordering somebody to attack somebody. The only way I'm going to entertain the idea that rhetoric can be violent is if those words were go beat up that guy or go deal with him, go specifically attack that person. Putting out ideas that you disagree with is not violent rhetoric. And calling it that is what excuses this kind of behavior. And if the left was really interested in unity, as they claim to suddenly be into, we need to come together, unity in the political violence, as they claim to say, they continue to use the words like those who think differently than I do, those who believe differently than I do. And in Mr. Curtis's case here, those who won't honor the fact that I am mentally ill and think I'm a woman and want to go by woman's pronouns, those who won't do that for me are violent. And that necessarily excuses the types of actions like the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It just goes. It's the end of the conclusion. Because when somebody is violent to you, this is in your mental psyche, this is in the way we all think. When somebody's being violent to you, when somebody's attacking you, harming you, you have a right to act in self-defense. And as long as we continue to peddle the lie that somebody thinking differently from you is violent, it will continue to excuse the actions like the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You're not doing anything to tamp that down. Charlie Kirk, he had violent rhetoric. That is a disqualifier. That makes anything else you have to say, any kind of condemning you have to say over the political violence, completely useless. But it's not just Emma Curtis, the man that calls himself Emma Curtis, rather, that engaged in this kind of rhetoric, because just before, we had Bashir coming out and saying political violence of any kind is completely unexcusable. We can't be allowing that to go on, which thankfully he said that. But at the same hand, if we just look, just a little bit ago here, we see him putting out a statement when Charlie Kirk was coming to Kentucky. He put out a statement onto his Twitter condemning Charlie Kirk for coming to Kentucky, which, by the way, Kentucky in vast amounts voted for Donald Trump. To say that, he's divisive because, he went ahead and, he said some things that we don't like. That's the same things that Donald Trump says, that the vast majority of Kentuckians agree with. So what are we trying to say here? What are we claiming that Charlie Kirk is doing that's so far off when he comes to Kentucky or came to Kentucky to discuss things? Here you go. Here's the tweet. Charlie Kirk's, this was on 8/18/24. So this was about a year ago. As Andy Bashir said, Charlie Kirk's presence here stirs up hate and division, threatening the harmony we've built in Kentucky with his inflammatory rhetoric and bad faith activism. So you can't, at the same time, you're saying that, and keep in mind too, stirs up division. So that isn't about what Charlie Kirk is saying or has said when he's visited Kentucky. It's about people's responses to it. And somehow Charlie Kirk, and this is the same thing that Mr. Curtis, councilman out of Lexington, had to say, it goes right in line with that same thought process. That people's reactions to your words that are in and of themselves not issuing threats. Like, for an example, not saying, I'm going to attack you, but just words with ideas, but people's reaction to it is the problem. And if people react to your ideas badly, you're at fault for it, not the people who, of course, are the ones who should have control over their own emotions. Charlie Kirk is responsible for the actions of others that respond to him. He's no control over others. But yet, people like Andy Bashir in that post, that's what he was saying. Men like Councilman Curtis here, that's what he's saying. He's saying that's violent rhetoric. We shouldn't whitewash it. Rhetoric, by the way, and ideas that a vast majority of Kentuckians agree with. And by doing this, by exposing that side of them, at the end of the day, are we leading to a better society because of it? One, I think a lot of people are being won over to the right. They're seeing that reaction from the left and saying, oh, wow, this is kind of evil. I didn't realize this ideology was so evil. And it really points to a biblical truth, really, that when your ideology is surrounded and informed by yourself, when you yourself are the most important person, of course, that will lead to evil ideologies. You see, Christian conservatives as a whole, and we know Charlie Kirk was a Christian conservative, we don't find value from per se what other people think about us. I mean, there's obviously, your boss has to think something of you to get a promotion and things, so that has that value. But our worth, our self-worth on this planet is not determined by others. It's determined by the fact that we all have a creator. We all have a God that finds value in us. That's why we say our rights come from God. The same exact thought process. And because we have that constant factor, that our value, our personal worth is not tied into whether or not people use the right pronouns, is why we are naturally not as violent as the left is. It's why we are not called to violence. It's why we don't react to other people's opinions the same way as the left does, because our personal value and self-worth and belief in our existence on this planet is not tied into what other people have to think about us. We get it from our creator, that constant. And that's why when you look at leftist policies, it's all about me, me, me. Even on the right, when we're pushing for something, a thought process, like when we're standing against something like using incorrect pronouns, we're not doing it because we're concerned about us. We're doing it because we look at the other and say, that's not truth. That person will be unhappy. That person cannot be a healthy individual denying the truth of who they are and recognizing their value. It's not tied up in us. Well, we'll be back in a few short minutes here on Kentucky's Voice. Your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. We'll see you back here in a few minutes.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise. Speak up and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. Thank you all so much for joining us today. If you want to join into the conversation, feel free to go ahead and text us here at 502-571-0970. Once again, that is 502-571-0970. If you have thoughts, feelings, opinions, you can voice it there. Also, you can go ahead and text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to that phone number if you want to help out what we're doing here. So we've been discussing on the show about the Charlie Kirk assassination, mainly the response to it. Now, one thing we've seen is on college campuses, you've seen a large amount of individuals coming out to honor Charlie Kirk with candlelight vigils, people coming out to support him. And you've also seen some pretty horrific things. For an example, around the University of Louisville, some posters and signs being hung up of drawings of Charlie Kirk being shot to mock the assassination and mock Charlie Kirk for doing those things. And while that is, I believe, a minority in our society, I believe the vast majority of people recognize the assassination of Charlie Kirk as something horrific, unforgivable, and never excusable. And no matter how, quote unquote, violent as these people on the left that don't fall into the majority of us will say, it is it wasn't violent rhetoric. It's just ideas. And you can argue against them if you want to. You don't need to shoot a guy over it. And but despite that, the left, of course, doesn't know what quite to do, because they kind of sort of have to recognize that their own rhetoric, as far as constantly castigating anybody who disagrees against you as committing some kind of genocide. I mean, transgenocide or right wing or left wing genocide or something like that. Constantly playing that out, pretending like you're in The Handmaid's Tale. This is one of their favorite things. Walk around pretending like they're in The Handmaid's Tale because people don't believe in killing babies. Those kinds of reactions definitely leads to problems. But they can't grapple with that well. But colleges and universities are having these events. I do want to share with you, this was a statement put out by Michael Frazier. He's associated with the Kentucky Students' Rights Coalition here in Kentucky. He says, unfortunately, since the death of Charlie Kirk, the Kentucky Students' Rights Coalition has received over 160 allegations for First Amendment violations from 6 campuses across Kentucky. Many of these allegations were disproven or reasonable neutral restrictions, like not allowing candles versus allowing candles. However, many of these allegations echo a consistent ring. University administrators using security fees and theoretical concerns for safety as reasons to relocate the event away from central campuses, requiring students to do additional outreach for even based upon content concerns and perceived threats by people who disagree with Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk. And the 6th District Bible Believers versus Wayne County, Michigan, is universities may not do content-based restrictions or disabuse vigils out of concern for reactions to said vigils. So there you have it. The Kentucky Students' Rights Coalition saying, hey, there's some issues going on across campuses, across universities, where they're trying to tamp down on the Charlie Kirk vigils and those out of quote-unquote concern over the reaction. Of course, the easiest thing to do is allow the heckler's veto from a governmental standpoint, but we do have a First Amendment right, something that Charlie Kirk, in a way, died defending. But there was a candlelight vigil held on University of Louisville's campus. We have Diana Starr here. She visited that, was a part of that. Diana, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Andrew. It's great to see you again, too. Yes, I attended it last night, and you could feel the ambiance of the whole air when you walked right onto the campus. Even though we didn't know what to expect because of all the controversy, and as you said before, all the hate that has shown itself across there, not only our U of L, but across the country. But this is what I feel. I feel like that the love and the unification is bombarded the hate all to pieces. When you went and the people were worshiping of the speakers, I think that was a foundation, Andrew, that was built from the country's reaction when Charlie was killed. And so when you went onto that campus, it was prepared for us. You see what I'm saying? It wasn't just a lackadaisical crowd. That crowd was already ready. It was prepared to honor him and listen to what was said. And it was something that I can't even explain. It was a spiritual thing that occurred. So when I listened this morning to flashback and feedback from all the haters again, it's becoming ludicrous, don't you think? Now that they're continuing to speak out about Charlie and what he did wrong, it's becoming ridiculous. And I laughed because
I think you're right. It is ludicrous. It is ridiculous. My concern here is whether it's a small minority, 10%, 20%. What's their reaction? They're not having a moment of introspection. I mean, even as we've seen people losing their jobs, I don't know if you saw this about the University of Kentucky, actually in campus security, putting out a comment on Facebook indicating he was liked the fact that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. This is a man who works in campus security at UK.
Wow.
He was placed, last I saw, on paid. I don't know why it's paid, but paid administrative leave as they investigate. What do they have to investigate? I don't know. But as people see that, I'm still seeing individuals commenting and making statements. They're not afraid of. They continue to not look internally and say, "Oh, I could lose my job over this" or something else. They're still making those statements. While I agree with you, they're in the minority. My question is, Diana, how do we deal with that minority? What do we do here? I mean, they're cheering violence. That reaction may inspire others to violence. How do we deal with those individuals and be able to take this moment as a unity moment for the country to move forward?
Well, I think that you're correct about, as we see it, it's a minority. But you and I both know, besides the spiritual aspect of it, that evil's going to go forth and it's going to continue. So it doesn't lessen the danger to us, Andrew. I agree with you. I saw that, what happened with the security guy, and I had to take a second look at each security guy while I was standing there with the other people. And I tried to represent as WBNA, and I was looking around and I'm saying, what's going to happen next? Is one of these security guys fool us? And in fact, I'll tell you that as I was walking by myself across the campus where I had to park afar, and a gentleman came up to me, and for a moment, I sparked a fear. Okay, all it takes is one person of that minority, as you said, to do something that will fire up the other side. So the gentleman walked up to me and he said, is that a Charlie Kirk shirt you have on? And I said, yes, it is. He said, are you a fan? Now, at that moment, what would you think, Andrew? You don't know. We don't even know what is the next moment's going to be. It turns out he said, thank you. Charlie Kirk changed my life. He was a student. And I walked in peace over to the vigil. But you are correct in saying, how do we stop the hatred? Because if it's fed, it's going to grow. Because you cannot assassinate an idea. I think I said that before, but I just want to tell you, as I was leaving real quickly, there were administrative people in the golf cart asking me how I know they were dressed appropriate, professional. They saw my T-shirt and they said, oh God, in that derogatory form. And I should have stopped. I was tired, but I didn't. I just went on and said, there's no sense right now. Back to you, Andrew.
Well, yeah, we will continue to see those kinds of reactions. What do we do about it? How do we deal about it? Some people have cried out against the quote-unquote cancel culture on the right. I do think there's a big difference. We'll be discussing that after this short break. You're listening to Kentucky's Voice. Want to join into the conversation? Feel free to shoot us a text, 502-571-0970. Join in the conversation. We'll be back in a few short minutes.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice, your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. We're discussing the reaction to the assassination of Charlie Kirk around the state, the different comments and statements that we've seen a lot of people making. And while, as myself and Diana Starr were talking about in the last segment, while I do believe that the vast majority of people are mourning this death, or at least look at it as a negative. And I also think this is something where a lot of people, I don't know a percentage, I'd have to guess, but I feel a fair amount of people have looked at the response to this from Democrats, leftists, whatever you want to call it, more so from Democrat leaders is kind of strange behavior regarding it, of course, but also looking at the people that vote the same as they do and watching the reactions. And I think they're looking at it saying a large amount saying, wow, maybe I'm on the wrong side of this issue. If all these people that I vote with are celebrating something that is horrific and awful, I didn't realize the deep-seated evil that was in the beliefs I've held. I need to rethink things. I think there is a large amount of that going on, but there's also individuals who fall into this minority that are not being quiet about their excitement over the death of Charlie Kirk, or somebody like Charlie Kirk. And I was, as I mentioned with Diana Starr in the last segment, we have a UK campus security individual that had made a statement online quoting, I believe, Mark Twain, but just posted the quote on an article in response to Charlie Kirk's death, talking about how I've never wished death on anyone, but I have read a great few obituaries with excitement or happiness, and basically indicating, look, I'm glad Charlie Kirk's dead. I didn't like the guy. Now, he has since been placed on paid administrative leave while they, quote unquote, investigate. I don't know what there is to investigate. He made the comments clearly. Either you allow that kind of thing to happen or you don't. Giving him a paid vacation isn't much of a punishment. You'd love to see that go into firing. We've seen some other individuals. In fact, I got sent this yesterday in regards to this is a Megan Dunzel in Lexington. Now, Megan Dunzel is reportedly a Fayette County Public School educator there at Fayette County Public Schools. According to Lane Allen Elementary website, it looks like there is a Megan Dunzel that is an individual that works at that elementary school, teaches art. So, you know, likely is the Megan Dunzel here, but had a post here, people throwing around the word celebrate. No, there's only one death. We're all very excited to celebrate, and it's not this one. And the comments then go, whose death are we all excited to celebrate? Megan Dunzel responds with, more champagne for me. Don responds with, but what are we drinking champagne to celebrate? I'm confused. Another person chimes in, I think many people are hoping for the orange dictator. So that is allegedly a Fayette County Public Schools elementary school art teacher talking about how after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, she would be excited to celebrate the death of someone else, implying, of course, the death of Donald Trump. So you have those situations going on. You see other situations going on across the state where individuals that are making these statements are being brought to the public, a lot of them being fired, let go. We saw tattoo artist got fired from a tattoo shop as well here in Kentucky after making some statements celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. And I've seen a fair few people trying to defend, not so much defend the words, but saying, look, they have freedom of speech. Why are you attacking them? This is just the right cancel culture. When the left cancels somebody, that's wrong. But when the right does it, it's okay. That's calling basically us hypocrites for calling these people out for their posts. Now, first off, Specifically, when we're talking about people, one, that are working on the taxpayer's dime, specifically the gentleman working in literally campus security at UK, this was a assassination that took place on a college campus. This should be, if you're working in campus security, this should be like the worst possible imaginable situation to happen on your campus, and you're celebrating it. And so it comes into play. What is your ability to do your job as working in campus security if you're the kind of person that celebrates when somebody you disagree with is assassinated on a college campus? Do you think that people feel particularly comfortable with you in that position when other people come to town that you disagree with now visiting that campus and you're in charge of security? How do you think they'll respond to that? Or you have people like in public government positions expressing that. And that is of concern because, one, these people are obviously being paid by the taxpayer. But two, these are people in positions of authority that have been put there on the taxpayer dime, essentially by consent of the people one way or another. The person who has authorized the money to be spent on their salary indirectly is somebody we voted on. And so if you're going to be paid out of my pocket, I would like for you to not be evil. And I think that's what's really key about this quote-unquote cancellation culture coming from the right on these ridiculous and abhorrent comments coming in regards to Charlie Kirk's death. Because it isn't just, what's the left canceling us over when they want to cancel us? I've tried to been canceled before many a times. They tried to cancel me because I wouldn't hold back when I owned a coffee shop, I wouldn't hold a drag show at my business. My statement at the time was that, we try to be a more family-friendly place, and I don't think that's something children would want to see, families would want to see. In the same way, I wouldn't allow a burlesque show to be hosted at my coffee shop. I wouldn't allow a drag show to be hosted at my coffee shop. I believe they're sexual performances, and I don't want that around children. Is that violent rhetoric at all? Am I wishing death on anybody? Am I celebrating somebody's death? Am I expressing evil beliefs? No, I'm simply saying, look, I believe those are sexual performances, which, by the way, they are. They are. And you can debate me on that all you want to, but those are sexual performances. I believe those are sexual performances. I don't want to host that at my shop. And from that came about a cancellation campaign to try to cancel my business at the time. Then, a few months later, we hit lockdowns again at my coffee shop, and I refused to shut down, brewed there in Lexington. I refused to shut down, and the left attempts a cancellation of the coffee shop. In a way, I guess the only person who succeeded was Andy Bashir, because he took away my licenses to operate, and we're still in court trying to get those back. So when my lease was up and I needed to move locations, I was unable to do so because the state of Kentucky wouldn't license me to operate a restaurant, a business that an alcoholic business, a business that serves alcohol, or a business that operates along those realm of things. And it was just part of our business structure. We served alcohol at this coffee shop. We were open a little bit later. Sometimes we served alcohol. You can disagree with that, whatever. The important thing is it was a part of our business. Everybody else can get an alcohol license, but we can't because we did something Bashir disagrees with. So still, I guess, technically Bashir canceled me, but we're in court fighting about that. Long story. At some time here, to you listeners that are hearing this story for the first time, just Google Andrew Cooperrider, and you'll see all kinds of stories about it, and some other time I may talk about it. But regardless, the point is that they tried to cancel me over that. What was I doing? I was operating a coffee shop. That's it. Operating a normal, standard run-of-the-mill business. Sure, I didn't shut down when the governor ordered all the businesses to, and they thought I was killing grandma by doing it. But I was just literally operating a business. People get canceled for using incorrect pronouns. We see TikTok influencers, trans TikTok influencers that go around looking extremely manly and then go into stores and places, and when they get misgendered, they attempt to cancel that restaurant for calling them sir instead of ma'am, not honoring their pronouns. That's what they try to cancel us for. That has nothing to do. We're not wishing death on anybody. We're not trying to deprive a human right from anybody. See, we have a right to life, liberty, happiness. We all have value endowned on us by God. We all have a right to live. We're not trying to violate those rights. So when the right is now, quote unquote, canceling people on the left for expressing some sort of agreement with the murder and assassination of Charlie Kirk, it's not the same thing. It's not even close to the same thing. If people on the right, you know, one of these whataboutisms we hear so often right now from the left and arguments is to deal with the assassination or killing of the state senator in Minnesota. Absolutely horrific thing, condone political violence. Nobody excused that, though. I did not see one person on the left say that, well, that's okay that she was shot and murdered. One, the guy who killed her kind of knew her. It was, you know, it wasn't like I guess you'd call it a random act, but it wasn't like random in the sense like this guy knew her. But also, in fact, what I heard from the right about this woman was that her voting record had actually improved recently. And it was unfortunate she was assassinated because she was, and her viewpoints were morphing to be actually more conservative. She had just recently taken a vote on immigration that fell in line with a conservative viewpoint. I didn't hear anybody on the right cheering and clapping that she was killed. Also, importantly, nobody before she was assassinated was calling for her to be killed, was calling her violent rhetoric, was calling her literally a Nazi. It is what we see with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, though. So even in their whataboutism, the right's response to it was a far cry from these individuals that are literally celebrating the death of a husband, a father, celebrating the death of an individual who simply used his right of free speech to express a viewpoint they simply disagreed with. So I won't lose any sleep over these people being quote unquote canceled, and I won't feel like a hypocrite about it either. Because you know what? Words do have consequences. I think the consequences should fall in line with what you have to say. And if you're wishing death upon others, yes, you deserve to be punished for that, just like a small child put in a corner. We'll be back in a few short minutes here on Kentucky's Voice. I'm Andrew Cooper Ryder.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider, here in this final segment. We've been discussing, kind of talking about, of course, the Charlie Kirk assassination, specifically what the response to it has been here in Kentucky. If you want to join into the conversation, feel free to text 502-571-0970. Once again, text 502-571-0970. You can also text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, give to that 502-571-0970 number. If you want to donate to the show here, we are a nonprofit, so, help you out on your taxes or something. Anyways, we did get a text here from an individual saying, it's the lefties using their campaign roster to mobilize street gangs, Antifa, and all. They are really encouraging domestic terror against people. I think there's definitely some truth to this. I was actually talking to my father about this on my way in. And so back in the day, before I owned my own businesses and everything else, I was in sales. I worked in specifically sales management. I ran very large sales teams all across the country. And one of the concepts I would talk about when I'm dealing with workplace morale was something called resonance. And this is something that goes on in sound waves and, waves at all. And when something's vibrating at the same frequencies next to each other for long enough, the frequencies play off each other. And eventually they get louder and louder and louder until something breaks. Now, most of us, especially those of us who are conservatives, and many people too that vote Democrat, but I think are disagreeing with what's happened to Charlie Kirk. We have lives, we have children, we have jobs, we have responsibilities, bills to pay, mouths to feed. Ain't nothing in this world for free. But so we have all those things going on that distract us. We don't have the time or frankly bandwidth to sit down amongst a bunch of other people all the time and complain and talk about how evil everybody else is. We just don't have that. But on the left, they have done a huge job of building up grassroots organizations, and what they do at a lot of times, so you have the Soros money, you have money coming in from a lot of donors. The Democrat Party as a whole works a lot better with their activism base than the conservative party, Republican Party does, mainly because if you get down into it, just to be quite honest, the activists on the conservative side of things want government to do less. They want government out of people's lives. And frankly, when it comes to the donor class, as I always say, especially the big corporations, the millionaires and billionaires, as Bernie Sanders would say, when they're donating, it's more of an investment to them. They want to get something back out of it. And when you're on the side of people who say, look, I want government to do less, our donors are going to have to be intrinsically powered up. They're going to have to be intrinsically, not because they're going to get something out of it, but just because they believe in the message, and that's why they're going to donate in order for the grassroots. Now, the Republican Party as a whole, working their donation sources, while they will say they want the government to do less, in reality, a lot of times they have no problem using government in order to help those who do donate to be able to profit off their donations, the corporations, everything else. Because of that, the grassroots organizations, they don't, on the conservative side, they don't work well with the party. Because the grassroots organizations are the true believers. And so they don't work well per se because they're going to be sitting their ass in the Republican Party. Why aren't you doing the thing that we want you to do? And so the Republican Party isn't going to be flowing money into it. Now, on the Democrat side of things, what do the true believers want? They want government to be as big as possible, forcing down viewpoints, forcing people to use the right pronouns, and forcing private businesses to behave in the way they want, forcing social media companies to behave in the way they want them to behave. Basically, use the power of government to absolutely force, not win in the court of good ideas, like Charlie Kirk advocated for, but rather using the power and force of government to get their way. That's what they advocate for. And the Democrat Party has no problem with that because that falls right in line with what their donors want, because their donors also want the government bigger, just like the donors for the Republican Party, because they want their payoffs. They're going to get it. And so for that reason, you'll see the Democrat Party apparatus and the donors flowing that money down into these activist groups. Now, what these activist groups do is hire these wackos that have nothing else going on in their lives. And you know, they're happy to work for $15 an hour, knocking doors for some Democrat socialist candidate, or sitting there doing activism work and professional protesting and everything else. And they will give them a job to do it. That's why it can be the middle of the day. Literally, it was like 3 p.m. the other day in a small town here in Kentucky. It had like 10,000 people. And there was a LGBTQ protest group. There's like 4 of them. That's a lot. All 4. 4 of them out there protesting because they have nothing better to do but sit around and do this. They don't have families and jobs and other things. This is their job. And now going back to that idea of resonance, they sit around in a room together and play off each other. And suddenly somebody as benign as Charlie Kirk that simply disagrees with them becomes the ultimate enemy. And it seeps into these people's minds, and it really corrupts them. There's this video I saw on Twitter. I want to go ahead and play for you. This is a mother talking to her kids about she's got great news. Let's see if this will work. I just sent it over to the producer like right before this, so hopefully we got it here.
Donald Trump died.
Second best news.
The vice president died?
Okay, third best news.
That Elon Musk died?
Okay, no. Nobody died. My best friend's getting married.
Which one is it?
Taylor Swift! Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce got engaged!
That is disturbing on so many levels. So those were 2 children. Those of you who couldn't see, those were 2 children. One is 12, one is 8. I have no idea how this awfully horrific, horrible of a human being convinced somebody to give her children, whether naturally or adoption or whatever, but she did. And so she's got these 2 children. She's asking them, I've got great news. Guess what's the best news? And these children respond first by saying Donald Trump died. She said, no, what's the second best news? They said the vice president died. Okay, what's the third best news? Oh, Elon Musk died. And then she goes in, no, my best friends are getting engaged. Like, who's that? Oh, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And then they're like, oh, yay. First, you can tell on those children that's a performative reaction. I mean, there was a delay. They didn't even realize they were supposed to be excited about Taylor Swift dying. But specifically, what has to be wrong in your brain, not only to encourage your children to celebrate other people dying simply because they disagree with their parents' worldview? What has to be wrong with you? Second thing that I have a question about, what has to be so sick in your brain to have you record it and then post it? You both recorded it and posted. So not only are you raising children, asking them to do this performative action of pretending to be happy that somebody died. They don't know. They're kids. Those are young kids. They have no idea exactly what they believe. You're shaping them. So you're sick enough to shape your children in that way, whose ever children it is, assuming they're hers. She didn't kidnap them. So you have children you're shaping in that way, and you can't, and you record it and you post it. You're like, oh, this is a great idea. Let me just show the world what a horrific human being I am by posting my children celebrating the idea that somebody might have died. And then it takes another level of mental illness to call Taylor Swift your best friend. What are the chances Taylor Swift knows who she is? Like, well, she might know now, but I'd say 0. I'd say Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift have no clue who that awful human being is. But yet those are her best friends, pointing to, once again, she, like, outside of these two kids who she's raising in such a way, in such a selfish way that she's ensuring they're corrupted for the rest of their lives. Like I said, assuming it. That then you put out there and you're calling Taylor Swift your best friend. Nobody, and her getting engaged, that's like the fourth best news in your life. You know, you'd think the first best news might be like, oh, I found somebody to marry me again. We tricked somebody. Like, you think that would be it. That'd be the first best news. But to say that your best thing to happen in you or your kid's life, best news, is for Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, or Elon Musk to have died. It's horrific. We got a text here that came in, says, that was a complete post just to receive clicks only. Yeah, that's probably right. But what's that say, right? To receive the clicks, that our society rewards that kind of behavior. Person texting and saying that. You're right. That was done for attention only. I mean, nobody sits at home and is like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to record my kid's reaction to Taylor Swift getting engaged. Who, you know, I'm going to record that while and then when they respond with being so happy about somebody's death, that's excellent. I'm going to post that. Of course, they're doing it for attention. Of course, they're doing it for the clicks. But the point is, there are people who agree with them. There are people who see nothing wrong with doing those kinds of actions. And here's my point about unity. Absolutely, I want the country to come together. And I think more people have been won over to our side, and I believe more people agree with us, and I believe many people have woken up to the evil of the core evil beliefs that shaped a lot of their political views. Not saying they're evil. That's the other difference between the right. I'm not going to sit there and call their rhetoric and their beliefs evil and genocidal or anything else and call them evil or genocidal. No, I'm talking about their beliefs are rooted in an evil belief. But we as conservatives recognize that the world is not necessarily a great place and that there is a spiritual battle going on. And that's why we have other tools than shooting somebody in the neck in order to solve our differences. And I just hope that minority is either shamed or somehow is won over to our side. Well, I've been Andrew Cooperrider here for you on Kentucky's Voice. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Tomorrow, somebody else will be hosting, no idea who. But you can tune back in and hear somebody else's take on the day. Until then, though, we'll be seeing you here at Kentucky's Voice.